Hey, Michelle is back. Part 6, I believe, January the 30th, 2026, on Friday. I'm putting out a series of videos because I'm doing everything in my power to attempt to interfere or get in between what's happening to avoid a catastrophe that's set to happen, encouraged to happen, and intentionally made to happen. And that's the battle between the biological man and the biological woman. And we're not understanding um, why this is happening. But why this is happening? Because if we did, we would probably not participate in it because it's like an intentional, like it's like having a bully, bully in the form of government, religion, politicians, whatever. That criminal negative energy is the bully, and the criminal negative energy of that bully is attempting to battle against the biological man and the biological female, believing that we're in competition with each other when we have nothing to do with each other. Meaning, as a biological woman, I have nothing to do with except, okay, just listen to me. I am a biological woman, okay, and I have no idea what it means to be a biological man, and vice versa. Okay, what I do know is that it required a biological man and a biological woman to create who I am and what I am and why I am via procreation. But what gives me life is creational life energy, which is energy. It's a pulsation of energy. A lot of people like to say with the battery. The battery pulsates the positive and the negative. The masculine and the feminine to create the results. And so we are so fixated on our physicalness that we are completely disregarding our spiritualness, which is no longer exists. This word no longer exists, but it is understood, which is nothing more, nothing less than our creational energy. Spiritual energy is nothing more, nothing less than creational life energy. Sometimes when teachers come through, they have to work with what they have. So they were calling it spirit when in actuality it was creational life energy. What gives me life is the creational life energy. My parents were a part of that process, though. So without the creational life energy, I won't exist. You won't exist. But you can't tell that to our pseudoscientists because our pseudoscientists believe they have that power because they are fertility doctors or, they're participating in this life and death process of who we are, what we are, and why we are, and think they are the masters of that. Okay, that's the fallacy. Okay, and I told you these scientists will understand this. It's basic. Okay, in other individuals you can listen, all but I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm attempting to do as well. And I told you there is a group of people that was our responsibility as helpers to help disseminate this properly. We have all the tools, we have all the information about stuff, but due to our lack of proper thinking, not thinking for ourselves, what that spiritual group was doing was just regurgitating. And I'm not talking about the primary group that's in another country. I'm talking about the groups that circle around, the USA, believing that the United States of America, is bigger than any other country or continent on this planet. Okay, they know who I'm talking to because I know they pay attention to me. So this battle of the male versus the female has been going on since my birth. Okay, so that's over 50 years. Whereas there's a conscious and unconscious attempt to eliminate the biological woman. Don't be fooled, because certain dictators believe if they get rid of the biological woman, there will be no chance of offsprings developing, descendants, children. So they believe if they get rid of the biological woman, that means they will get rid of the biological man that may be attached to that woman, or may be, uh, attempting to engage with that woman. But what these illogical, deranged dictators fail to recognize that they are essentially eliminating themselves. Okay? So, and that has nothing to do with anything but the signs of the times, the understanding of what is life, what is life energy, and these dictators, which are all over the world, committing genocide, are interfering essentially with the appropriation of life energy. And there's consequences of that. Okay? You cannot be pushing out one race of people. Well, you can, because we are and we have been. But we cannot, you can and you have and you will continue, but pushing out a particular race of people, not understanding the hereditary factories, the hereditary properties of certain people, meaning you're pushing out hereditary properties of a person or of people, not realizing you are essentially eliminating yourself. That is going to be the most revelation, the most talked about revelation in the distant future, when people start asking, what happened to those people? And I told you about the black paint test, and I'm not going to go into all of that any more than I need to. It ought to be logical. Okay. I'm sorry. Take a can of black paint, add white to it, and tell me when it becomes white. That's a metaphor. But so many people were dismissing that because they figured, oh, that's not going to have anything to do with me. Well, it will. Your descendants, your ancestry are going to have to answer for, or attempt to answer, what happened to those people? What happened to those people? So let's talk about this biological man and biological female again. Okay? And it's going to have to be talked about several times until some people snap out of it and learn how to think for themselves and realize sometimes the best teachers give you a sprinkle of the truth, but you're responsible for figuring it out on your own. That's what great teachers do. That's why our teachers, when we were in high school, they were great teachers. Some of them were great teachers. But a lot of them, even though you are responsible for a certain level of knowledge to disseminate to your students, you still need to be educating yourself as well. Continue to gain knowledge in that field, in another field. You just don't stay stuck in that knowledge base, regardless of who you're training, regardless of who you're teaching. You're still responsible for elevating. Okay, so and that's the same thing with scientists. That's the same thing with engineers. That's you're still responsible for elevating and thinking it through, and help some of these scientists who are attempting, to wake people up as well, like Einstein attempted to. And I think Carl Jung attempted to kind of bring it into a reality with the yin and the yang, even though that's just a metaphor. Um, the yin and the yang, the biological energy of a female and the biological energy of a male. They're supposed to synchronize together, but they're not supposed to come together. What they do is they synchronize together and then reverse roles. You know what I'm saying? So what happens in the course of our evolution is we'll start out as, say for example, we'll start out as females, biological females, the majority of us. And then we'll have a certain level of biological men. In the best of circumstances. We're in the worst of it now, unfortunately, because we churned out too much and we're causing confusion. And so this is going to make sense. There ought to have been a balance of biological men and biological females, and at some point they switch and become after they've churned out enough and gained enough knowledge as they're passing the baton to their lineage, the energy that they're storing, it switches up. And so you will spend your evolution you'll start out as possibly a biological man for the most part in your lineage, and then you'll switch it up and you'll be a biological female. That's the natural course of things. It's happening naturally. No interference, no in vitro fertilization, no C-sections, no test tubes, no artificial intelligence, no clone. It's just a process that's happening naturally. Now, at some point, once the planet is stabilized, sure, you can introduce some androids and da 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 as assistants, similar to what artificial intelligence is supposed to do. It's not doing it. And sadly, it will not. We've made matters so unmanageable. That's why I said artificial intelligence is what's the consequence. And transgenders are a consequence too. Listen to me carefully here. We have an issue with transgender or a transgender identity, and that's due to overpopulation. And that is the consequence, where there's a massive confusion. Okay? In other words, we're churning out so many human beings, churning them out. We did not allow them the time to process properly. Because when we pass away, we still need to go into a chamber of, and I say we, just look at it, just picture it as energy. Our energy has to go into a chamber to kind of reevaluate and process what we've learned in our physical bodies. Our physical bodies is what we use to learn, to evolve, to make mistakes, da 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 da. Once we pass away, we go into a chamber of energy that is working to encapsulate what we've learned, the essentials of learning to be a true human being in a true sense, with universal love, with peace and joy and happiness. Those kind of elements, virtues, values, it's neutral positive energy. Okay, and that energy is stirred around, is assimilated, and whatever the process energy goes through to then encapsulate that energy and put it into another human being, into another personality. And then that personality takes what you've stored and then still work this process. So you spend some time as a biological man, and then you eventually be a biological female, and then the process goes on like that. It goes on and on and on like that. But since we've screwed it all up, we've screwed it all up. Whereas, for example, when we pass away, say for example you pass away when you're 80 years old, and that's the average actually. We're supposed to live to 100, but the average is usually around 80s or 80. Let's just say 80. Okay, so you pass away when you're 80, but you're supposed to be let me see if I got the calculation right. You're supposed to spend a portion of that time, which is usually, let's just say, okay, you pass away in your 80s, okay. You're supposed to be in that series of, your energy is supposed to be in that series of events, processing what you've learned in this lifetime for about 160 years. Let's just say that, double that, and then once that's done, then you are ready to be that energy, that how it, because it condenses over time, goes into another personality, and then that personality is supposed to take up from where you left off, per se. But while your energy is in this soup of production, it understands and knows and figure out, is aware. Let's put it this way: is aware of what's going on planet Earth. So it may not come back. It may not. It may be because of the state of the planet. That particular battery, which is your spiritual form, may decide not to be used again. Okay, and so we are being told that we are being told that not only are we massively overpopulated, when we pass away and go into this chamber of processing what we have been taught, what we have learned through our lifetimes, our previous lifetimes, there's supposedly, so it ends up back into your battery, your spirit form. That's the simplest as I'm going to give it to you, because that should be simpler. If you think of a battery, that battery doesn't impulse out into a product, into a equipment, into a human being, because there are 130 million other batteries are waiting to do the same thing. So if you have not put in the work to understand who you are, what you are, why you are, your spirit form may not ever create another personality. What will seem like forever, or during the time when this planet is about to explode, who knows? When I say explode, meaning the humans get wiped out, you'll possibly wake up to that event happening. Does it sound like science fiction? Does it sound like bullshit? Consider it. So our transgender community is a consequence. And that's not being disrespectful at all. It's just highlighting to you what is happening to our lack of proper behaviors and actions when it relates to our population. We are churning out confusion. And I want to find another word. Got some issues with the sinus. There's a malfunction. There's an underdevelopment. And that's why I'm saying this to the transgender community. especially the transgender females, it is not the fault of biological females. Understand that. Be kind and gentle with yourself if that's what you have been led to believe. The biological female and the biological man is two separate entities. Okay? One doesn't one is not responsible for the behaviors or actions of the other. We're supposed to learn from each other. We're supposed to come together if we choose to. But the same thing can happen with men on men and women on women. Okay? And the intersex ought to speak for itself. But then we have these mad scientists and mad and deranged doctors believing that they're supposed to interfere with the intersex. And they're doing the same thing with the transgender community. I know that there are certain things about our realities that we cannot necessarily control. So, for example, yes, I'm a biological female. I have the reproduction and the chromosomes and all that to prove so. And if I were to pass away, which I will at some point, in the future, and I'm buried, and then say 50 years later or so, 100 years later or so, my corpse is unearthed, and someone pulls me out of the ground, they're gonna still be able to determine based on my structure that I was a biological female. The same thing with the male. Even if you cut off organs or add organs. Okay? The transgenderism is a consequence of our overpopulation. And if you understand that we're all energy, you're going to understand that there's going to be some misfires. There's going to be some underdevelopment. Now, a lot of people want to kind of put everything in one bowl and say it's mental illness. It's a consequence. Okay, it's a consequence. So that means what? Can you reverse consequences? Can you reverse consequences? It's an effect, yes. It's a logical conclusion. It's a logical interference. Okay, I like that. It says here something that logically or naturally follows from an action or condition, cause and effect. It's going to logically happen because of our illogical behavior and action. Does that make sense? Our illogical behaviors and actions create the logical conclusion, the logical consequence, is what I said about artificial intelligence. So I'm going to stop right now because I don't want to go over too long with this, and I'll come back and continue to talk about this in the most basic form possible. That way that we can all save ourselves from the consequences, because the consequences are dire and dangerous. Talk to you soon.